There's a man sitting across the table from you in a negotiation. You've done your research. You know his company is bleeding money. You know his investors are circling like vultures. You know that if this deal falls through, he's finished. And yet, when you look at his face, you see nothing. No sweat on his brow, no tightness in his jaw, no micro-expressions betraying the desperation you know is eating him alive. His breathing is steady. His voice is calm. His hands rest flat on the table like he has all the time in the world. And in that moment, despite everything you know, despite every advantage you hold, a cold feeling starts creeping up your spine because you realize something terrifying. You cannot read him, and if you cannot read him, you cannot predict him. And if you cannot predict him, you cannot control him. That man is more dangerous than anyone else in the room, not because of what he knows, not because of what he has, but because of what he refuses to show. Most people think danger looks like aggression. They think the most threatening person is the one who raises their voice, who makes threats, who lets you see their anger burning behind their eyes. This is a child's understanding of power. The truly dangerous individual is the one who has learned to make their inner world completely invisible to the outer world. They have severed the connection between what they feel and what they display, and that severance is what makes them untouchable. Let me tell you why this matters to you specifically. You clicked on this video because something in you recognizes that the game you've been taught to play is rigged. You've been told to express yourself, to be authentic, to let people know how you feel. And every time you've followed that advice, you've handed weapons to people who use them against you. Your anger became leverage. Your enthusiasm became a target. Your fear became an invitation. You've been bleeding information your entire life, and no one ever told you that information is the only currency that actually matters. Today, that changes. I'm going to show you exactly why emotional control is the ultimate form of power, how the most controlled individuals operate in ways that make them nearly impossible to defeat, and most importantly, how you can begin developing this capacity in yourself. This isn't about becoming a robot. It's about becoming someone who chooses what to reveal and when to reveal it. The difference between those two things is the difference between slavery and sovereignty. Let's start with a fundamental truth that will reframe everything you think you know about human interaction. Every social exchange is an information war. When you meet someone, when you negotiate, when you argue, when you flirt, when you compete, the person who reveals less while extracting more always wins. This is not opinion. This is mathematical reality. Information asymmetry determines outcomes. The person who knows more about the other while revealing less about themselves holds every advantage. They can predict while remaining unpredictable. They can prepare while you improvise. They can strike at your weaknesses while their weaknesses remain invisible. Now think about what emotions actually are in this context. Your emotions are live broadcasts of your internal state. When you show anger, you're telling everyone exactly what bothers you. When you show excitement, you're revealing what you value. When you show fear, you're advertising your vulnerabilities. When you show desperation, you're announcing that you can be pressured. Every emotional display is a free intelligence report handed to anyone watching. And trust me, someone is always watching. The emotionally controlled person understands this at a cellular level. They have trained themselves to intercept the signal between feeling and display. They still feel everything. This is crucial to understand. They are not numb. They are not dead inside. They experience the full spectrum of human emotion, but they have inserted a checkpoint between the experience and the expression. They feel the anger rise, and they choose whether to show it. They feel the fear grip them, and they decide whether to let it reach their face. This checkpoint is the source of their power. Consider what this means in practical terms. When you're negotiating with someone who has this capacity, you're operating blind. You throw out an offer, and their face tells you nothing about whether it's close to their target or laughably far away. You make a threat, and you have no idea if it landed or bounced off. You try to find common ground, and you can't tell if you're building rapport or wasting your time. Every tool you normally use to navigate social reality becomes useless. You're a pilot flying through clouds with no instruments, and they're watching you on radar. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The emotionally controlled person doesn't just deny you information. They can feed you false information. Because they've mastered the connection between their inner state and their outer display, they can reverse engineer it. They can project calm when they're panicking. They can project uncertainty when they're certain. They can show you exactly what they want you to see, and you'll believe it because you have no other data to contradict it. They become authors of your perception. They write the story you believe about them. I want you to think about the most successful people you've encountered in your life. Not the ones who got lucky. The ones who consistently win across different domains. I guarantee you'll notice a pattern. They're hard to read. When things go wrong, they don't spiral. When things go right, they don't gloat. They move through chaos like it's a light breeze. People describe them as unflappable, composed, steady. What they're actually describing is someone who has mastered the most valuable skill in human interaction. The ability to create a gap between stimulus and response. Now let me show you why this makes them genuinely dangerous rather than just impressive. When you can't read someone, your brain goes into overdrive trying to fill in the gaps. This is hardwired into human cognition. We cannot tolerate uncertainty about other people's intentions, so we start projecting. We start assuming. We start imagining worst-case scenarios. The emotionally controlled person doesn't have to threaten you. Your own mind does the threatening for them. They become a screen onto which you project your fears, and your fears are always worse than reality. This is why the quiet person in the room often commands more attention than the loud one. The loud person has shown you everything. You know exactly what they're capable of because they've already displayed their full range. The quiet person is an unknown quantity. They might be harmless. They might be lethal. You don't know. And that not knowing creates a psychological gravity that pulls attention toward them. They take up space in your mind without saying a word. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out in conflict. Two men are about to fight. One is pacing, shouting, making threats, telling everyone what he's going to do. His adrenaline is visible. His emotional state is completely exposed. The other man is standing still. His arms are relaxed at his sides. His breathing is slow. He's looking at the first man with an expression that reveals nothing. No fear, no anger, no anticipation, just observation. Now tell me, which man would you bet on? The one who's already exhausted himself emotionally before a single punch is thrown? Or the one who's conserving every resource while gathering information about his opponent? The answer is obvious. The controlled man has already won the psychological battle. The fight itself is almost an afterthought. This principle scales to every domain of life. In business, the person who seems least desperate for the deal always gets better terms. In relationships, the person who seems least needy always has more power. In social hierarchies, the person who seems least affected by others' opinions always commands more respect. This isn't manipulation. This is physics. Emotional control creates a vacuum that others rush to fill. It creates a stability that others orbit around. It creates a mystery that others can't stop trying to solve. Now I need to address something important. You might be thinking that this sounds exhausting, that constantly monitoring and controlling your emotional displays would be draining. And you'd be right if you're thinking about this as constant suppression. That's not what I'm describing. Suppression is pushing down emotions and pretending they don't exist. That's a recipe for explosion. What I'm describing is regulation. It's the ability to feel fully while choosing your response. It's not about having no emotions. It's about having emotions without your emotions having you. The distinction matters because suppression creates pressure that eventually ruptures. Regulation creates capacity that grows over time. When you practice regulation, you're not fighting your emotions. You're creating space around them. You're learning to observe them without being controlled by them. You're developing what psychologists call metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking, to feel about your feeling. This capacity doesn't drain you. It liberates you. Let me tell you how the emotionally controlled person actually experiences a crisis. When something goes wrong, they feel the same initial spike of cortisol and adrenaline that everyone else feels. Their heart rate increases. Their muscles tense. Their mind starts racing toward worst-case scenarios. But here's where they diverge from the average person. They notice this happening. They observe their own stress response as if watching it from a slight distance. And in that observation, they find a gap, a tiny space between the stimulus and their response. And in that gap, they make a choice. They choose not to let the stress response hijack their behavior. They choose to breathe. They choose to think. They choose to respond rather than react. This gap is everything. This gap is where freedom lives. Most people don't even know the gap exists. They experience an event, they feel an emotion, and they act on that emotion as if the three things were a single unbreakable chain. Event, emotion, action, automatic, unconscious, predictable. The emotionally controlled person has broken that chain. They've inserted awareness between each link. Event, awareness, emotion, awareness, action. And at each point of awareness, they have choice. I want to give you a framework for developing this capacity because I know that's what you're really here for. You don't just want to understand why emotional control is powerful. You want to become emotionally controlled. So let me give you the actual methodology. The first practice is observation without judgment. Start paying attention to your emotional reactions throughout the day. When something triggers you, notice it. Don't try to change it yet. Just notice. What does anger feel like in your body? Where does fear show up? What happens to your breathing when you're excited? You're building awareness of your own patterns. You can't control what you can't see. The second practice is extending the gap. Once you can observe your reactions, start practicing pause. When you feel triggered, take one breath before responding. Just one. That single breath as you exercising choice. Over time, extend the pause. 2 breaths. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You're training your nervous system to tolerate the discomfort of not reacting immediately. The third practice is response selection. Now that you have a gap, start using it deliberately. When you feel angry, ask yourself what response serves your interests best. Sometimes expressing anger is the right move. Sometimes it's not. The point is that you're choosing rather than reacting. You're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. The fourth practice is facial and vocal control. This is where it gets tactical. Start practicing in front of a mirror. Learn what your face does when you feel different emotions. Then practice keeping your face neutral while inducing those emotions through memory or imagination. Learn to speak in a steady tone when your heart is racing. These are mechanical skills that can be drilled like any other. The fifth practice is strategic display. Once you can control your displays, start using them intentionally. Learn when showing emotion serves you and when hiding it serves you. Learn when false displays can redirect a situation. This is advanced work, and it requires the foundation of the previous 4 practices. Now, let me tell you about the shadow side of this capacity, because I won't pretend there isn't one. The emotionally controlled person can become isolated. When you stop broadcasting your internal state, people feel less connected to you. They sense the distance even if they can't name it. Relationships require some vulnerability to function. If you become completely opaque, you may win every negotiation but lose every friendship. The skill is knowing when to deploy control and when to let people in. The most dangerous person isn't controlled all the time. They're controlled when it matters and open when it serves connection. There's another shadow to address. This capacity can be used for genuine harm. Someone who can perfectly mask their intentions can deceive without detection. They can manipulate without leaving fingerprints. I'm not going to pretend this knowledge is morally neutral. It isn't. What I will say is that this knowledge exists, whether I share it or not. The people who would use it against you are already using it. Your choice is whether to remain ignorant and vulnerable or to understand the game and play it consciously. Let me bring this to a close with a truth that might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. The reason emotional control makes someone dangerous isn't primarily about what they can do to others. It's about what others cannot do to them. The emotionally controlled person is dangerous because they cannot be easily manipulated, pressured, or destabilized. They cannot be baited into mistakes. They cannot be provoked into revealing their position. They cannot be rattled into poor decisions. Their danger is defensive as much as offensive. They are a fortress that others break themselves against. And this is why I teach this. Not to create predators. To create people who cannot be preyed upon. The world is full of individuals and systems designed to trigger your emotions and use them against you. Advertisers want to trigger your insecurity so you'll buy. Politicians want to trigger your fear so you'll comply. Manipulators want to trigger your anger so you'll make mistakes. The emotionally controlled person is immune to these attacks. They see the trigger for what it is. They feel the pull but don't follow it. They remain sovereign in a world designed to make them reactive. You came to this video because you sensed that something was wrong with the way you've been taught to operate. You were right. The advice to be open, to express yourself, To let people know how you feel was never designed to help you win. It was designed to make you readable, predictable, controllable. Today you learned the alternative. Not suppression, not coldness, but mastery. The ability to feel everything while revealing only what serves you. The ability to remain calm when chaos surrounds you. The ability to be the still point in a turning world. This is the most dangerous form of power because it cannot be taken from you. It requires no external resources. It cannot be regulated or outlawed. It exists entirely within your own nervous system, your own mind, your own choices. And once you develop it, you become someone who cannot be easily defeated. Not because you're the strongest or the smartest or the most connected, but because you're the most controlled. And in a world of people who can't control themselves, that makes you more dangerous than you can possibly imagine. The question isn't whether you're capable of developing this. You are. The question is whether you're willing to do the work, to observe yourself honestly, to practice when no one is watching, to fail repeatedly before you succeed. The emotionally controlled person wasn't born that way. They built themselves through thousands of small choices, through thousands of moments where they could have reacted but chose to respond. Through thousands of times they felt the pull and didn't follow it. That path is open to you right now. The only question is whether you'll take it.